I might as well, while I'm up here, just introduce everybody now. This is Andi Gang, who gave us that fantastic reading just
Hey, hi!
Next to Andi is Natasha Scharf, author, DJ and journalist, best known for lots of things, including the book Worldwide Gothic. Next to Natasha is Rosie Garland, singer, writer, performer. She's also Rosie Lugosi, the Vampire Queen, as well as author of the novel The Palace of Curiosities and Vixen. And next to everybody, I feel like I'm the local university challenge. He's a bass player, he's a vocalist from the Membranes, he's a journalist, he's a music writer, he's also in the band Goldblade, he's written loads and loads of books about music. I know that at the moment he's crowdfunding a book about Goth. It's John Robb. And my name is David Quantick. Thank you for coming. Right, I've just set my watch, but I feel I should really be having a candle with black markings on the side to mark the passage of time. Thank you very much. Welcome to this event. It's tied in with the British Library's Gothic event, as you may have noticed from their short promotional trailer earlier, which was rather sweet. And we're going to be ranging over, obviously, the area of Goth and its musical importance, and I'll be asking people a couple of questions. But one of my short intro is it's always fascinated me the way that Goth, as amongst all the so-called tribes, all the music genres of Britain, is the only one to come out of literature and poetry. Say what you like about mods, and I think they're wankers. Mod, like a lot of things, came out of fashion and clothes. There is that element to the Gothic subculture, but it's unique to me. While other subcultures are about dressing up or about sex and dancing, the Gothic subculture, to me, it came out of things. It came out of an interest in death. It came out of an interest in the unknown, in darkness, and there really isn't anything like it. And I think for that reason, it should be celebrated. And I'm now going to ask, starting with Andi, who gave us that fantastic reading and brilliantly tied everything in, to Dracula, to Bram Stoker, to the origins of Goth and Gothic. What sort of stirred your interest? How did you go from whatever you were doing when you were younger to becoming a singer to becoming a so-called Goth?
I've always loved the arts. I first used to paint, seriously. Then I was a political activist for some years. I was arrested several times for that, by the way. I fell into music when I went on the run from the police, to be honest. And I moved to Brixton, which was a safe haven then. But I always loved music. It was, as a medium, music overtook painting, because it's multimedia. You can change lyrics, music, visuals, film, all the things I love. And I just fell into it, but I always had the desire to express through music, because I felt it the ultimate medium. And as for the style of music, or the things that one is drawn to, well, it's just something that's in your nature, in your soul. You know, it's like black and white movies, 20s, 30s. Of course, I love Bela Lugosi, like most people here have done, when I was a child, you know. That's how it started.
I think probably most of you agree some element of that in your attraction. What about you, Natasha?
For me, it's really difficult, because Goth has always been there. I've never been attracted to anything other than Goth and Gothic. So I mean, from the first moment I saw Siouxsie and the Banshees, which is probably on the old Grey Whistle test back in the late 70s, before they were even, fully Gothic, there was just something about them. And I was very young at the time, and I sat down with my mum and I said, what on earth was I doing watching the old Grey Whistle test? What was I doing being attracted to this music? And we sat and we tried to work it out. And the only thing I can think of is that my father was a really big horror movie fan. And I used to, sneak downstairs in the middle of the night and peek the head around the corner, and he'd be watching Hammer Horror, or, sort of Bela Lugosi movies, or Boris Karloff, that kind of stuff. So I was drawn to that, probably because it was forbidden. I wasn't supposed to be watching it. He had loads of horror books. He was always reading, literature like that. He loved Gothic novels. My mother was an artist, and she was drawn to the macabre. And so I was brought up kind of surrounded by that. My father also worked in the medical profession, so we had these sort of rather gruesome medical encyclopedias. Oh. So I think that, coupled with the visuals of Susie and the Banshees, who, for me, they kind of always looked like they'd fallen out of some sort of twisted fairy tale. And I think the songs are very simplistic, they're dark, but they're very simplistic and sing-songy and almost like sort of nursery rhymes or fairy tales, certainly early on.
Well, literally, they would be nursery rhymes
Yeah.
and fairy tales, yeah.
And so I think just the whole thing, that's what attracted me. And then kind of as I went through life, people started saying, oh, you're a goth. Am I? You mean, hang on, there's actually a thing? I'm not doing something that is just unique to me. Other people like this stuff too? Wow. Where are they? Take me to them. And eventually I met many of them and, realised it was a thing.
I mean, that's I think, is one of the great things about this. It's a community. Would you say, Rosie, that when you became interested in music, in literature and so on, that you found that all these strands came together into what is called goth?
I think it did. Goth called and I answered, and I do think it came from, it's that classic thing of looking back and thinking, where on earth did that come from? And I guess for me it came from a profound sense from when I was little, because it wasn't, the music movement wasn't around then, being quite ancient. It came from I thought you might sympathise. Being I'm the oldest person in the entire place, probably. From a profound sense of feeling different, and I didn't have words for that as a kid. I knew that I was adopted, and I knew that I didn't want to be pregnant by the age of 16. And although I didn't have the word queer when I was sort of like 9 or 10, I certainly knew that I didn't fancy boys in the way that all my friends did. And I think all that kind of coalesced into a sense of being on the outside and not being on the inside, which kind of links into the goth thing. But I think when goth really first happened, I had an aunt who lived in the States, and people in the States have got a slightly different idea on what constitutes improving literature for children. And I think the Christmas of when I was 8 or 9, she sent a collection of Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Mystery and Imagination as a Christmas present for me. And I can distinctly remember the first time I read The Pit and the Pendulum. And I didn't know that Goth existed, I didn't know Gothic literature existed, but I knew some deep chord in myself had been strummed, and that was the music. For me, the music came out of Gothic literature, and so I devoured a lot of that. I was around when punk was happening, and so my mother refused to let me wear black because she said it was an old lady's colour.
Same thing here.
Yes. And I used to really piss my mum off by saying, if you'd let me wear black when I was a kid, I probably wouldn't wear so much now. Lying, of course. And I left home, moved north, best place in the world to live, still live in the north, and it just happened that I was hanging around with a bunch of people in 1980-81, and the March Violets happened. I made a bit of a rubbish goth because I was a lesbian, there were no other lesbian goths, and I kind of made a really rubbish lesbian because lesbians didn't have long hair and wear leather.
I
know, I never even, misfits. Thank you, John.
But on the musical side of it, you were very well placed, because for reasons which nobody can really put their finger on, goth really sort of took off more in the north of England than it did. I was in Devon at the time, and there were no goths. There were surfers, and I think surfers are the opposite of goths, in that you hope they might drown. But you were there. I mean, basically, because you come through punk rock and you were in the north of England, so you must have seen. In the exhibition downstairs, there's a very strange article on the wall. It's the headline is "Punk Gothic," and it's like,
we talked about that before.
Yeah, there isn't such a thing as goth music at this point, so they're calling it punk. So, what was it like at that time?
Well, for me, from my perspective, and I come more from a punk rock perspective, the punk was like the hammer that kind of smashed pop culture in the mid to late 70s. They never reconstituted the culture the way they wanted, so if you're into kind of darker things, you kind of reinvented all those little bits of the shrapnels left over in a darker kind of way. But already in punk, there was like darker ends of it. One of the early Adam and the Ants, Dirt Wears White Socks, a record hated by the music press, but a genius record, a template for a lot of stuff.
What a massive fan base. I remember being a concert.
Yeah, he could get 1,000 people to gig in London on 10 bad reviews, Yeah. And I'd even argue the first 3 Stranglers albums are a very important template as well, very dark sounding band, dressing in black as well. Joy Division's in there as well. But the first time I ever heard the term goth was when Tony Wilson described Joy Division as a goth band, and that was about really early on, before they even, when he just picked it up for Factory. So there was no sense that there was a scene either, and I think, we kind of talked about this before, with the idea, there's two things here really, that in the UK, we invent all the best youth cultures in the world, and then we completely disown them and look a bit embarrassed about it, while the rest of the world has a great time enjoying those youth cultures. But at the same time, you would never admit you're in the youth culture. I mean, I would never admit I was a punk, and I was interested in goth music. There's no way I'd ever say I was a goth. I mean, why would no, I don't think anyone in this room would consider themselves a thing. There's that idea, I know everyone says individually you're all the same, but people like the look, and they like that kind of music. So it's a very disparate scene of people doing very different things in different places at the same time. And for me, the kind of when it went overground, in a sense, to me, was the Futurama at D-Side Leisure Centre. Was that 1980 or 82? I can't remember now. It was year was.
82, the Futurama one.
Yeah, and I know people have been doing stuff before, but that seemed to be the first weekend where everybody seemed to meet everyone else. Some deathcore played it, the Damned played it. There's like a lot of bands, and it was just one of those moments where everyone went, wow, where's all these people come from? They're into it. And it was a continuation of punk, which it was the freakier end of punk, which is interesting. One of the things that's interesting about punk, and glam's a big influence as well, and goth as well. It's all about, the thing about glam was, it was people dressing up on top of the pops, and it was unattainable, you couldn't do it, and it was like David Bowie came from Mars, he didn't come, and Mark Bolan came from London, and to us in Blackpool, London couldn't as well be Mars, it was like a million miles away. But the great thing about punk and goth was, it was dressing up in the suburbs, and the not so great thing was getting beaten up and dressing up in the suburbs, but you were dressing up like the freaks you'd grown up with dressing up, and it was your turn, and you put your own street doing it. And that was the strength of it, and it got people to dress up and do freakier things, and it created a space for that to happen as well. And for me, and punk created the energy to do that, and goth reinterpreted it in its own kind of way. Now, there's an endless argument to define what exactly goth is, and everybody in this room will have their own interpretation of it. So if I gave you what my interpretation of it, but everyone go, oh no. But to me, it's more. There's obviously kind of classic goth groups, the Cure or whatever, the early Cure. Pornography is still one of my favourite records. It's a fantastic record, a really dark record. Joy Division is one, even though they were never ostensibly a proper goth bands, but the music's super dark, futuristic, never dates. But I also like some of the more underground, we've talked about this before as well, like I think Ashton's and Neubart in a sense are absolute classic goth band, even though Blix Bargeld will probably have a fight over about that, But the way he looked and what they sound like, and to me it's a very art, like you said a minute ago, about literature and stuff like that. It's an art movement, and this cliched idea, and it's great all the stuff about the vampires now, because everyone's attracted to the dark, and it's sexy, the dark side. But it's also a proper art movement as well. The way that
we'll come on to that in a second, John. Yeah. Talking about the musical side of it, I mean, you're right, I was around. I think there isn't a single person on this table who's under 17, if I'm honest. With all due respect. One of the strange, I do remember at the end of the punk, suddenly you'd see people wearing long flowing clothes, black clothes by and large, you'd see back combing. And it was interesting because after punk, things fracturing. You had these people on the King's Road with the peacock punk, and that was obviously sort of died off. You had two-tone coming along. You had the New Romantics, you had people dressing up as Mexican barmen, that sort of thing, which was kind of nice. And it was really interesting that also the sound, when you started basically becoming a musician and singer around this time, the sound of goth doesn't have a lot of bongos on it, a lot of trumpets on it.
No, I would say it was also pretty minimal. And I was trying to add, going back to Doug Was My Socks, so glad you brought that up, mentioned it. That album, perhaps the most seminal album, for me is as important, if not more so, than the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. I think the Beatles were a great band. Deserving of their reputation. It doesn't matter. It's just a why,
fair enough.
But I mean, Doug Was My Socks rewrote the rule book, and it's like, fuck yeah. May I say that? Fuck. Alex, sorry. We rewrote the rule book. Suddenly thought, I can do this. Like, yeah, I couldn't stand those freaking cliches, in music, and this was different. It was just coming from nowhere. It didn't sound like anything else at the time. It wasn't trying to fit into a market. And for not just myself, but for so many others, that was just like, yes, let's do something that doesn't fit anywhere. Right. Let's express ourselves freely, I just come from doing a lot of extreme weird shit, in my political days. And so I wasn't about to bend over and make music that I thought the record companies would like. It was like that, you know. I wanted to destroy all of that.
Which was just as well, because they wouldn't take any notice of us anyway.
I mean,
There is a way of doing that, which
Yeah.
I did do. I'll talk about it afterwards.
But I think that was one of the really exciting things about the 80s, which feels like we're kind of coming round to it again, was that we knew that the record company was never going to press our records. So we were with the Sisters with Merciful Release for a while, but it was this idea of like, if you haven't got a record label, start your own. Contact some people who will press up 7 inches, design your own 7-inch covers, and do it yourself. Maybe if you can get like, you know.
Yeah, that was a very important start that came out of punk as well. It created that space
to actually to independent labels and without being too rude. It's like NME, for example, weren't terribly nice. They weren't terribly nice. No, we're not going to pick on them because you're a very nice man. But a lot of the music press, the fashionable music press, like we sneered at us, and it's what happens.
No, it's absolutely.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think that's one of the reasons that Goth has survived, because it's never
been tainted by
it's never been fashionable. I think it was in a week in 1983, I would go to the Batcave because it had been in the face. It seems extraordinary now. You read about it in the face and you go down there and you think, oh, this is quite good, and then you wouldn't go back. But
See, that's when the rest of us stopped going.
right, because it had been too. It was too.
It was a good club in the beginning. The only thing I have at the Batcave is, for some reason, a lot of bands seem to have that association. Second Children being one of them, unfortunately, mainly from foreign press, and there was no association except the fact that we regularly visited the place because it made good music.
It seemed a very different thing than the North as well. You know, the Batcave was a very different scene, felt different.
Well, as I say, it had come out. There was this club, Gossips, in Dean Street, and the thing about Gossips was that it hosted. I used to go to a Johnny Thunders style night. There would be the modern romance nights. There would be so many different kinds of nights there, and the Batcave really was just another night. But because Goth looked great, because it had not been seen before, they were always in the style press, because it was a great photo, and I think that was a difference. Whereas people like Johnny Thunders couldn't really stand up.
They still looked great, though. Yeah.
So
they still looked great.
Yeah, they looked great, but they couldn't stand up.
I think that's one of the differences between the North and South, is that you've got in the North that Goth is taken, or post-punk is taken very seriously, whereas in the South the Batcave was very tongue-in-cheek. It was humorous. It was like, hey, let's have a great time.
It was more serious because you could get beat up for looking slightly different to all those towns. One of the interesting things about Goth is how so many of the bands, and I don't mean the epicenters of it, came from really unlikely places, like
Keighley.
Yeah, I mean, what a bizarre place to come out, something like that, and the towns, Barnsley, something like that. That's the place it came out of. It's people very committed to doing something in a quite dangerous kind of backdrop at the same time. Yeah. So I think there's quite a difference between the North and South. So even though they do link together, and there's no sense of rivalry between them. I think they came out of different kind. I think the London scene lot came out New Romantic as well, didn't it? And that little mixture of things that gone after punk.
And some of the art school stuff as well. You could, go to art school and look flamboyant. Nobody was going to beat you up, so it was a safe environment. And then you could then take that onto the club, pre-Batcave with the Blitz.
So I think like that in Brixton, I used to live.
Well, you can now.
People try to do Barnsley,
If you can conviction for something, you're there anyway, Keighley, I remember Batcave, Rosie.
Our first gig was in Keighley. First pilot gig was in Keighley.
It's great family,
Yeah.
Keighley. So that's important to make that distinction. But the other thing it's important to talk about, against the sense, is the music press maybe weren't covering it, but the fanzine was really important. Like Mick Mercer's Panache, it's a great fanzine. And Tom Bade's Vague, which to me is the best fanzine ever made. It's brilliantly written, and it's brilliantly laid out, and it looked really fantastic. And it's a shame that guy never actually got into the media really, because he's a really great writer, wasn't he? So the actual people writing Grim Humour, that's another great fanzine. So
there's an apology, which is a good one.
So it had its own media, and there were actually really good fanzines, some of the best fanzines this country's ever produced.
And I think again this has contributed to the longevity of Goth, because a lot of things, something like Mob very quickly became very, very commercial. Like you could be a 9-year-old boy, you could buy a plastic tie and a little pork pie hat and see your bands on top of the pops. whereas to be a 9-year-old goth would be a lot more difficult. And Tony, we'll go into sort of the emo thing maybe later, but I mean, what was it? So you start off, you like what becomes called goth. You read certain books, you dress a certain way. When did you realise that you weren't alone? Starting with Andy. No, don't you can be alone still if you want.
I've always been alone. There's nothing wrong with being alone. Different from being lonely. Going back to what John said earlier, very good point. And I too, I used to wear bondage pants, you know, when I was going to these demonstrations, but without straps, because you can't fight with bondage straps, take them off. But the thing is, you know, but I never considered myself or called myself a punk, and I still to this day would not consider myself as a goth. I'm just me. I'm an individual, as we all are. I just like certain things and express. Everything about you must be an expression, down to you, from tips of your toes to your haircut, whatever, however you want it. But I mean, it doesn't alter who you are inside. Your question again? I knew many people. I had Skinner to a friend, you know. I had these people. I didn't stick within one certain group. I had a mixture of people.
What did David always say before?
Except hippies.
Is there hippies in the goth clubs in the north?
It's quite deserved to run down hippies, because the proper hippies are the proper counterculture. Yeah. But when we talked about this before, it's probably was less of a scene than a loose confederation of people into roughly the same types of stuff in a very different ways. So that's how it started off. But I guess a lot of music scenes start off like that, don't they? Then they become very formalised, and then people start saying, but you're not doing the right things to be this thing, and that's when it gets really ridiculous. And it's one of those eternal arguments, isn't it? Like, what's a punk, what isn't a punk, what's a goth, what isn't a goth.
It becomes restricted.
And the dead arguments, aren't they?
That kills the whole filling point of it, you know? You must express exactly how you want. Don't go and get a ready-made, pattern thing, I must only wear this, I must only like that. It's a mishmash, That's how movements start. Before
the 1 year before he gets
to try to destroy them or do whatever. But then it becomes a carbon copy, which is actually why, for me, starting out in music, one of the missions, the agendas was to destroy oi punk, which I thought was...
You did it?
I loved Sex Pistols, absolutely, with a vengeance. But when oi punk, I just thought it killed the whole memory of.
That was more the media killed it.
Yeah, the media killed it, but
some of that
was that taboo version
from the world, from a discussion about oi punk now.
When you talk about sort of things being put into a box, almost when goth became goth, then when it got its name, that's sort of when it started to go, all right, goth, right, that's like Gothic, so that means that you must dress in a certain way, you must read a certain type of literature, almost at that point. And later on, many of us have tried to break away and say, well, you don't have to be categorised. I mean, for many years, Whitby Gothic Weekend, big festival up in Whitby in North Yorkshire, the local paper, the Whitby Gazette, would write about the black-clad hordes would descend upon Whitby. And then they suddenly twigged, well, hang on a minute, there's such a thing called cybergoth. Well, we can't call them black-clad hordes. So it was the many-coloured, and it's sort of, exactly. It no longer fitted into a little box. You can say all goths wear black, because that wasn't true.
Yeah, so the wider picture is a lot bigger then. I was hoping you would say some more words.
You just think of how profound you were there.
Yeah, it's a t-shirt.
I actually think art house, the term art house, which I first heard that when I was in a conversation with Ian Asprey, the singer, and he was living with me, not in the biblical sense. And we were talking about, he was playing the press for trying to hang the G word on this movement, this post-punk movement that happened. And everyone was trying not to have the G word passed over to them, because we didn't want the tabloids to create and kill the expression, the possibility for individualism, which is the key factor in any form of expression in any movement. And Ian Ashby just said, we talked about some of these bands, I said, they're just great art house bands. They don't need to be, and I totally agree.
But then it becomes another cliche. But then it doesn't matter.
Well, this was when
it's just a shorthand, and it's just an easy way.
Nowadays I think, well, okay, it's like categories are going to come anyway. So
as long as everybody in the category realises it's not a category.
Yes, good. And it doesn't become restrictive.
Yeah.
This is like now goth feels like an umbrella term. Certainly in Germany you have the trance scene, the dark scene, and it's even bigger. You get the Gothic metal, you get the medieval styles, things that you wouldn't necessarily associate with goth if you didn't actually know that much about it.
But that's the thing, always have to change cultures, they always fraction into more micro cultures.
Come a long way, it seems unfair.
I suppose that I think that's one of the keys, many keys to sort of the fact that this is the scene that wouldn't die. I mean, I have to admit, I think that's a kind of interesting strapline, the scene that wouldn't die, because for me it does seem to suggest that maybe it ought to. And it seems to, and for me that links directly into the person who wrote that strapline, the scene that wouldn't die, isn't somebody who'd call themselves a goth. And I am very interested in the way that goth does keep reiterating and reinventing itself, and I think you're right about the fact that it's long past has got a lot to do with that. But I am fascinated by how much goth is a dirty word, and so many people trip over themselves to say, I'm not a goth, but in a similar way that like the word feminist or the word queer is a dirty word, although queers are very, very good at reclaiming their insults, I'm very pleased to say. And it would be nice if goths were wanting to reclaim it a bit more as well. And I can see why some people don't want to be called goth, no names, no pack drill, because maybe it's felt like it's restrictive. But I do think it is really interesting that there is this huge sneering, which I'm fascinated by, because the Renaissance, when the Renaissance came in, there was a massive sneering culture against the medieval Gothic. It's fascinating.
Just historical.
Historical
you
sneering.
Can't blame anything.
No, you can't actually blame it, which is why I think he's so lovely. And then when you look at mainstream literary culture's reaction to Gothic literature, Coleridge in particular described Gothic literature as the trash of the circulating library. So it was trash, and also, god damn it was popular. And people enjoyed it. And I think this whole sneering, I think is one of the things why goths find it difficult to say, Mummy, Daddy, I've got something important to tell you, I'm a goth. And it's like, I'm sorry, I printed this picture out. It's from Tank Girl, The Odyssey, page 11 of issue 3, which actually I got from the British Library site because they own the original. And it's a brilliant, brilliant drawing by Jamie Hewlett of goths attacking a bunch of people, which I think is interesting considering the radio play we've just had. And it's the only time in the whole of Jamie Hewlett's comic creation where he writes a comment underneath the picture in which he addresses the reader. It's not the writer, it's not part of the story. And it says here, the fact that I've paid absolutely no attention to what goths wear is an even bigger insult to them and their turdy culture. Thank you, Jamie Hewlett. And so, and we're, well, yeah, exactly, very, very fashionable and probably buying a new Ferrari every year. I'm not bitter.
Well, Rosie, all the best culture is a culture that's not accepted by the mainstream.
I know.
Yeah, it's better to be on the outside. Once you're on the inside, it's boring.
But it's this idea of outside suggests that there is a mainstream inside to want to be in. And that's only a point of view. My attitude, and maybe it comes from being around queer culture a lot, is that I'm not outside, I'm just different. And I'm really proud of that. I'm not outside the who wants to be in mainstream culture? I'm not interested in Adidas t-shirts. Keep them. It's all a lie. Mainstream culture is a complete lie.
We've talked, I think, John and people talked about sort of the way that tribes, I mean it's a bit of a cliche, but when I was a kid everyone was in a tribe. If you weren't in a tribe, they put you in a tribe. What are you? I don't know, right? You like heavy metal, oh do I? That sort of thing. And It is a bit depressing now when you walk down the street in any town. Everyone seems to be wearing hooded tops with the names of shoes on the back.
That's actually not true.
It is where I live.
No, it's not true at all. You go to most towns on a Saturday afternoon and there's loads of kids into rock and metal walking around those towns. And those, it's not just a mass of kids who are just into metal, they subdivide into own little mini genres. So you just briefly mentioned emo there, which is kind of people dressing up in black clothes making music, virtual boy band music, but it's still a huge tribe. So, and now thinking back to when I was a kid at school, and there's only about 3 punks in the whole school. So you see documentaries or a film that's makes like 1977, that everybody's a punk. It wasn't like that at all, was it? Most people were walking around with tops, and they wouldn't have had names of shoes on the back, and they couldn't work out how to put the name of the shoe on the back at the time. So it wasn't like there was ever a golden period of culture where everybody's into really cool stuff all at once. There's there's probably more people now into so-called outsider culture, different culture, than there was when I was 18. So I think it's one of those things, when you're older, you can't tell differences between what the young people are into.
They all look the same to me.
Yeah. You live in Hastings anyway, so.
But we are here to talk about the musical side of things. I'm just going to do my favourite line that I thought of, which is that all these bands, and we don't have to name names, but Susie and the Banshees, Nick Cave, The Cure being the big three, all these bands who say that they're not goths. What I like is the fact that you don't get to choose. It's the people who like your music.
I've always said that. I said that when people talk about when people say, you know, when Johnny Robb will say, they weren't punks, that's not a punk band, whatever. You get, it's not up to you. It's up to the audience. The audience dictates what the culture is, and I think that's the biggest strength of it. When it comes down to the media, and we're just going to talk me and you out of a job here, David, it's not really up to us, is it? It's up to the people who actually buy the stuff and go to the gigs and are involved in the culture. Totally involved in the culture. They decide who's in and who's out. It's not up to Nick Cave to decide whether it's a goth or not. In fact, it'd be quite funny if we went back in time and said he's not a goth and no goths are ever going to buy his records. He wouldn't actually have a career at all, would he? Luckily, he did have a career because he's made endlessly great records, hasn't he?
But he's got a haircut, he looks a bit smarter nowadays. Yeah, all those videos when he was a kid, if he's not a goth, I don't know what he is. He's certainly not a mod.
He went to the back cave, didn't he?
He did. Well, he went to the back cave.
Actually, I don't give a tiniest rat's crap if the March Violets or me or anyone else is called goth. I'm far more interested in, well, did you like the lyrics? Did you like the music? Do you want to come to a gig?
What's it like, if I can ask the musicians here, what's it like to play that kind of music, to play music that means a lot to you, and then discover that, you know, again, this thing that you are not alone, that people want to come, that it strikes, I hate this phrase, strikes a chord with people?
Well, if it wasn't for people who want to buy the records, CDs, digital downloads or whatever, and turn up to gigs, we'd be standing on an empty stage performing to nobody. So personally, I think if it strikes a chord and people are into it, it's a no-brainer. It's like, thank you very much. And it's like, particularly if it's a scene that creates its own press, like I really like what you said about the fanzines, is it doesn't matter if the London-based presses go, oh, this isn't cool, and anyway, Jamie Hewlett hates it. It's like, if people are turning up and going, well, sod them, I've made my own mind up about what I want to listen to, then great.
So that's really accelerated the internet now, because people can make their own minds about things, because they can hear things and see things, and it doesn't get filtered by the so-called gatekeepers.
We always knew at the enemy secretly that people weren't buying it for our brilliant articles. They were buying it at what time gigs started.
Yeah, that's the same sound. We did a survey, we found out that 80% of readers bought it for the gig guys.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to remember when you're a music writer.
Oh God, we used to get upset when they took our names off the cover. We probably sold more issues when they took our names off the cover. But yeah, I mean, we talked about the music, obviously, because that's why we're here for, but if you were building a goth, if you've been commissioned by a major corporation to build a goth, what would you expect them to want, and what do you think? What's part of goth that people don't think is goth? Does that make any sense? Because there is the cliche, which we're not really here to talk about the cliche of goth. So what's the essence of it? If there was a goth soup, what would be in it? Not literally a soup.
This is really stretching out, isn't it?
I think what would be in it?
Oh, that's good. Go with that.
I mean, people say, I get asked a million and one times, what is goth? And it's like, So I said, well, goth is a dark aesthetic, you know. It's I look at things through a gothic lens. It's very difficult for me to say, well, blah blah blah, this is me, because I'm me, and why would I dissect what I am and who I am? So I think, you know, things that aren't goth, walking around with a hoodie with leather shoes on the back, that wouldn't be goth. I suppose unless you're into health goth.
Oh yeah, sorry, Natasha, I was on the panel earlier where I love this, a trend forecaster, I've had a new phrase, a trend forecaster told us that the new thing coming on now is health goth.
We go to the gym with just black t-shirts and black leggings and black trainers for years.
That's health goth. Adidas are at the forefront of it. Just so you know, you heard it here first.
We can all be health goth.
Yes,
Yeah,
but as far as I'm concerned, that ain't goth. I would also say that rap music isn't goth, although
the trend forecaster said that Kanye West is a goth because he's wearing a black leather kilt.
That's true.
There's some pretty dark rap music.
Yeah.
That's just fit in. Yeah.
Maybe it's gothic.
Well, two words you said I thought was quite interesting, was dark aesthetic, which I would actually say. It's actually a better term for the whole thing in goth anyway. It's weird, it's named after a tribe that sacked Rome.
I'd like to point out that the Romans sneered at Alaric and his mates.
Look what happened
to them.
History repeats itself many
But dark aesthetic is, I would say, is what you put in your soup, David.
The darkest.
Dark aesthetic, yeah.
Because then you can have your literature, you can have films, there are many goths out there that aren't actually into gothic literature and don't like horror films, you know, who are just, they call themselves goths or they're into goth because of the post-punk connection. And maybe some of them have political leanings. Last week when I did my book launch here, some people asked me, you know, what were the politics of goth? Well, contemporary goth doesn't really have politics. Back in the post-punk years, absolutely.
Is that true, Andi? Is there a political side to goth in the early years?
UK Decay, absolutely. Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Why not have that as an ingredient? And I would say, it just depends. Whatever you do in life, then, okay, so now we're talking about what is Gothic culture, but the most important thing is to say, be yourself, you know? Be true to what you feel inside. Surely that's why you're attracted to a look and aesthetic in the first place, way of thinking.
So individuality should go in the goth soup.
Absolutely, but there's something also you cannot put your finger on.
Which is why I say the dark aesthetic, because it's sort of like this kind of mass, bubbling goo.
But literally,
I like it.
It's good. And of course, like a frog and I
rule form.
I think there's a thing in the north again, I'm going to talk about Spectre North because that's where I came from. But every northern town on a Monday night would have a club you could go to, which was safe to go to, and that would be the goth, so that would be the punks, the hippies, all the freaks go to this club. They would generally play goth music because they'd be the kind of people more organised and get things together. But the music they would play would be slightly wider than what people think is goth music now. So again, this soup's got a lot of different ingredients in it, so you can go to some quite different places.
Orange peel.
Would have to be dark.
Yeah,
Blood oranges.
in Southern Counties.
I've done that, it's good, trust me.
There was the one club.
It was actually the biker pub. But, you know, the goths went there, hippies went there, the bikers went there, the punks went there, everybody went there. And they played the gothic music because everybody liked
It's a
it.
continuation of the Bowie Roxy thing before punk. But the Bowie Roxy clubs, there's only one in each city, but they wouldn't be in towns because it was too weird to get to towns. So by the time we got to about 80, 81, every town had a little scene, but it'd be about 50 people. So put that in the soup. But there's an interesting soup in the big pot for this soup.
Cauldron.
What's always very interesting to me is the early days of the scene when things haven't coalesced. That, you know, now if you were working for a music paper, if there were any, and you did a top 10 goth records, it would take you about 5 seconds. But
and you'd get a load of complaints about why didn't you include this? Why didn't you? That isn't goth.
That shows the scene is still alive when everyone's arguing about what
But
they
it's
define
like
as.
the BBC's recent, goth at the BBC, which, you know, I think
Shakespeare's Sister's a weird choice, isn't it?
Yeah, Shakespeare's Sister and PJ Harvey.
Drama were goth, though.
See, you're the sort of person who
Not
Although they were on the punk scene originally, weren't they? So
Yeah.
they connected in this weird way. Yeah.
It's just
So you talk about music, let's talk about music.
They were
That was their tenuous link on the
Oh, was it?
bit of ticker
Yeah.
tape thing that ran that
Yeah.
Wolf had to be part of the punk scene.
Yeah, well, these sang around the Pistols, didn't they,
Uh-huh.
in the early days? But it doesn't get my goth program, it's
No.
right weird.
No.
But musically, actually, the music is different enough to actually stand out to different things, isn't it? The music, the argument I have, the reason I was going to do a book, is Simon Reynolds did that fantastic book about post-punk, which dismisses goth music in one paragraph, saying, the Killing Joke of Bauhaus, I never really understood those groups, and that's it, they're gone. But to me, when I listen to Bauhaus now, they're an incredibly revolutionary band musically. I don't like anything that ever went before. They were doing like dark dub records. I mean, what a weird thing to come up with. Daniel Ash was one of the greatest guitar players that ever came out of this country. He never plays anything as dull as a riff or a boring guitar solo. He makes weird little noises. He's a really interesting avant-garde guitar player, but totally hated by the music press. And when you see people doing, talk about the early 80s music, they're never mentioned, are they? Or just sneered at or something, but incredibly influential bands. And worldwide terms, probably the most influential of all the bands we're talking about, because the influence there in America is enormous, isn't it? But we don't get the credit for it, and that starts to really annoy me. So that's the reason I was going to do my book, is the other half of the post-punk thing. Because in a sense, I always think, when I think of goth, I actually think of it as post-punk, really. Because it is, I mean, that's literally what it is, post-punk. Because at the time, nobody ever said post-punk, because in 1978 you were going, right, we're all just post-punk now, because it was just another version of punk, wasn't it? Southern Deathcore as well, it's an incredible musical band. They were doing stuff, probably out from the Ants as well. You could hear a bit of the Ants in there, but they took it somewhere else, didn't they? It was really original. But the loose things that join bands together musically is the bass guitar is very important, because that's the instrument everyone could learn very easily in punk, people writing songs, and it's very melodic in a lot of so-called goth bands. Guitar players do kind of weird little noises on top, a lot of tribal drumming, a lot of kind of great yodeling and singing, and you were kind of doing that as well, weren't you?
Well, I think the thing for us is that, was that we felt that we were like at the forefront of brand new technology. Guitars, bass, fine, but it's like, I know it's really ridiculous to think of the drum machines that were around at the time, but we were determined not to have a drummer right from the start. And it was absolutely where the new technology was happening. So I think that's another thing that felt important about the music, was trying out new things.
Right. So newness.
Yes, bizarrely, whenever, because a lot of it is about goth being about the past. But and obviously, March Flowers didn't call themselves goth at the start because we were there before the label. But it was a case of like, brilliant. Do you mean we can go to a gig on the bus because the drums are like that big? How fantastic! And so it was just that excitement of like, well, what happens if you go like that? Ooh. And it was that real excitement of working with new stuff, and I guess that's something that we still enjoy doing.
The thing about drum machines is, and I'm guessing, do you use the 606? What we use?
Yeah.
That drum machine doesn't date. It sounds modern now.
Actually, we bought, because obviously
But the more modern drum machines, so it's good to
we lost the 606, or I don't know, somebody cat at it, and we actually bought one on eBay. And it's like, oh my god, it sounds the same. So yeah, it's fantastic.
It's a great second drum machine. I know we're getting a little techy here.
Can we get 606 into the goth soup?
Yeah.
Is that one of the elements?
Sister Mercy.
Unknown element.
Yeah.
No, we can't.
And Steve Arbeen used one in Big Black because he likes Sisters of Mercy, which is one of those things that people never mention either, because Steve's brilliant, the music he's done is brilliant, and his aesthetic's really brilliant, but he's a massive Sisters of Mercy fan, but that doesn't ever seem to get mentioned because you're not allowed to mix that a goth band can actually be, the so-called goth band is meant to be. It could be influential, somebody's meant to work, So that's the reason we have the drum machine and the 606 Tony Rules. So let's put that in the soup.
I mean, the other thing is, like, a lot of goth really does go back to Susie and the Banshees, and even such a Joy Division. And it is those circular bass lines. And Steve Severin played, probably because he couldn't play the bass very well. So he sort of go there and I can't play the bass, you can tell by his fingers. But he sort of go there and think, oh, I can't go any further, I'll come back again. And that translates into Peter Hook's slightly more skilled bass playing, and you hear a lot of that on early goth.
I just thought that was, what a great way to approach a song, not from the guitar, from the bass. Bass was my first love, first instrument I learned to play when I was at school, and I just always loved the bass, so you put the dub radio records and old mates, dub DJs, And, they, Hook and 7, especially hooky. What a great way to approach a song, you know. Play like a guitar, lead riff. Who had done that on the bass before, you know, it's great. It gives you a different perspective on the song.
Space.
With the
Great
drums,
space.
yeah, but it just gives you a different perspective. It totally then opens up things for the drums. Then all of a sudden the drums will totally change, and you know, then the guitar part is reinvented and rethought, because so the guitarist has to approach not from a normal stance. Great, you know, that way you can investigate new territories.
But I think it's a lot of
New
factors.
dimensions in
Yeah. What might happen, Andy? I think in like I said a minute ago, because it's the easiest instrument to learn. So within a week, anyone can play a bass. So
Well,
why
I
choose on
think
it?
less, yeah.
And I think also because Stranglers again, because you never heard a bass that loud before. That was important, great sound. And John Robb as well in Peel.
Genius.
Yeah. And then because there was this dub reggae, and because John Peel is so fantastic, plays such a wide cross-section music. I think the late 70s was the time when the bass guitar got reinvented. It became a lead instrument. I think that really coalesces around that time of the so-called goth bands. So we'll have to put a bass guitar in the soup as well, won't we? Yeah.
And also, of course, with the, sorry to regret mentioning the soup now.
I quite like it, running with this, it's good. Yeah.
Also, another thing about the tiny guitar and the bass is it's a reaction, in some extent, against, you know, the crashing guitar of punk, just that relentless, I can't hear you, mum.
Which is great in its own way.
Great in its own way, but after 5 years of it, it's 1977 was the longest year in the history of the world. It's still going on. If you turn on BBC 4, you still see John and me in wheelchairs. You know, I remember seeing Take That or whoever it was.
But then you say that, you see, about the noisy guitars of punk, but then you've got certain strands of goth, death rock, who are bringing back those kind of punky guitars, and the horror punk, which, if we're talking about the German dark scene, they, you know, horror punk fits under that goth
But
umbrella.
with all
right?
respect to Germans, I spent half my time in Berlin. It's very blinkered, whereas, for example, if you go to Italy, there you'll see people are more glamorous, but there's more individuality in their approach to the way they dress, also to the music they like, and to the music they're open to. In Germany, it tends to be very, very blinkered. Not all of them. Neubaden, well put as well. Great art house band, and
Well,
brilliant.
they completely turn the thing upside down.
Absolutely brilliant.
You listen to one of their records, it's got like 100
I'm a
ideas.
big, big admirer.
Incredible. And their new albums of Work of Genius is absolutely
You know, when
fantastic.
you watch those guys at work in the studio,
Yeah,
it's like watching artists paint.
yeah.
You know,
I wanted to move on. No, I didn't want to move on because I wanted to think, we've talked about pretty much every aspect of the classic goth record, except the one that is, I hate Marmite. I mean, I literally hate Marmite, but I also hate that comparison of you either love it, because I just think I don't love it or hate it. It just
So that's not going to the soup.
it's not going in the soup. Christ, no. But if we're using the Marmite love it or hate it comparison, one thing is the goth vocal, because some people, it's not Annie Lennox, is it? By and large, there are brilliant singers who are associated with goth, and there are also dramatic singers.
What is a goth vocal?
What is a goth vocal?
Exactly.
Am I too far from the mic? Not now. Am I?
You should know, you're a singer.
Yeah, you're the same. You're the same. There you go.
What is a goth vocal? What is a goth vocal?
The laziest and the probably most cliche way, it's kind of a croony thing, and it goes back to Jim Morrison and the Doors kind of thing, that sonorous, deep, kind of croon, the deep voice thing. And it's a cliche idea, but we should mention the Doors in here as well. Yeah.
You are like a walking encyclopedia. I am really impressed.
It's quite sad.
You know your onions, sir.
The Doors, the first goth
We
band.
should talk.
In a sense, but it kind of goes back about, but a lot of this setting will come round. We'll start with Jim Morrison in a way, won't it? The poetic thing, the literature thing you talked about before, this is a guy who can remember, his party trick was he would get people to read the beginning of a book out and he'd know which book it was, and he just wrote in those books. I don't even know when he got the time to read those books, because I'm sure he was drunk all the time. But so there's that, the way he looked, the way he dressed, and the way he acted, the way he sang. It's quite an important influence on Gothic. And interesting enough, Apocalypse Now, the film, came out at that time, and that was an influence on people as well. And the Doors being on that soundtrack put them back into the underground of the main street, didn't it? And I remember in David Quantick used to do lots of stuff with pop-up style, didn't they? Like great little cartoon strip about it, things like that. So that was part and parcel of it as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was a change in the times that we'd come out of. Yeah, a slight bleakness, but Apocalypse Now, everybody liked it, but it didn't really filter into every...
Yeah, you did it.
Really?
I'm sorry, I have got a real thing about Marlon Brando being the most overrated actor in the world. I'm getting close.
But the way he couldn't act, and he wasn't that good in it, actually adds to the part.
Did it? Oh,
yeah.
So
It passes the acid test.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to say something about Gothic vocal, just because I
Yes.
can, because I sing like you, but I don't sing like you at all. Again, one of the things I really liked about the Violets is that we had a man at the front and a woman at the front. And for any people of the female persuasion in the audience, will know that being a woman in any kind of music scene, I think it was when I found out that I loved S Club 7. I thought they were marvellous. When I found out that the women who sang in S Club 7 got paid half of what the men got paid, and it's like, you're surprised. Yeah, and there is that thing about it's difficult enough being a woman in music anyway, and I'm kind of proud of the fact that I'm not the backing singer. I don't know if anyone was at Whitby Gothic weekend this weekend. Heaven 17 played blinder of a set. Sorry if that's because they played an extremely good set. And at the end, What's His Chops at the front was introducing the band, and he turned to the three women standing next to him and he said, I can't remember their names. Luckily, most of the audience went,
You know what I like about that is you couldn't remember his name.
Call me old-fashioned. And again, I suppose one of the things I do when I'm singing, and still do it when I'm singing, is although I do some floaty stuff, I'm not a floaty, ethereal female goth singer, because that does seem to be what, certainly from the female vocal side, seems to happen, is that you've got the lovely growly Jim Morrison male singer, but women are just supposed to go, and then you've got Susie. Thank you.
That at all.
Thank you. And it is, and it's like that's why I love the Susie aesthetic of female vocaling.
I think what I was going to say about the goth or Gothic vocal, the thing that, and this leads me to another area, is drama. That a lot of Gothic music, a lot of things get called Gothic because, something like The Birthday Party, whether it's Gothic or not, Nick Cave he hasn't quite developed the crooning, the later style of the adverts he did later on. And Susie in particular, I mean that was a wonderful thing to hear a record like Helter Skelter done the way it should be done, not like a Beatles song. Later on, every artist obviously develops, changes their voice, and not everybody's a dramatic singer. But I think that was the thing, and I think this is sort of my final thing about goth, which you may or may not agree with. One reason it's had a hard time, one reason it gets mocked by people, one reason that style-conscious press don't like it, is because like anything, it gets mocked because anything that puts its heart on its sleeve, anything that's open in its allegiances and isn't afraid to say, I like this, will have the piss taken out of it. Whereas anything that's cool and insular, anything that doesn't let you in, that says, you can't come in, you have to find out. But goth has always been, do you think that's a fair point?
That's a really
I don't think in England we're comfortable with extrovert culture, are we? It's, everybody's a bit out there. Like you say,
I mean, when we say extrovert culture, normally we think of people playing the bongos, jumping up and down. That's sort of, with goth, I'm talking about emotional.
Well, taking yourself seriously is, even though you probably aren't, people aren't taking themselves that seriously.
It's like you look at someone like Peter Murphy in Bauhaus. Bela Lugosi is dead. The idea of calling a record Bela Lugosi is dead and being that open and saying, I am so into this, I could split down the middle. It's just kind of, some people would call that naff. I think it's great, but do you agree with that?
Let's go back briefly to Nick Cave and Susie. No matter what they don't want to be called or what other people choose to call them, they did great vocals for those songs. They were the perfect vocals for the songs they sung. It just, as a one with the music, and that's what a good vocal should be. That's what a good record should be, a form of expression. I saw that music revolution that was occurring in the late 70s, early 80s, the same with Joy Division 2, Ian Curtis's vocals, perfect for the songs, for their music. And that's what it's about. You don't think about, well, it's going to be this, so I will approach it this way, because you just go with the flow of the music. You express with the music. That is the first and foremost duty of an artist. Musicians are artists. What it should be.
Which is to do, I think, as well with the emotional openness of Goth, which I think is slightly paradoxical, given that Goths are seen as kind of a little closed society, sitting on a step reading a book and smoking their fag. So, we're going to open the floor to questions in a while, but talk about the emotion of Goth. It is an emotional music, isn't it?
Okay, all good music should be emotional.
All good music isn't.
But no, this is true. It's true.
Maybe it's because Gothic is experimental, certainly was at the beginning, and certain strands of Gothic still are, and so it doesn't want to fit into that box of what it should be, and so therefore it is perceived as being more emotional, more dramatic, because it's not, I'm just going to sing this song about this empty thing, blah blah blah. You're singing about something that actually means something to you, whether it is the political post-punk, whether it's about a film that you really like, whether it's a book that you really like, whether it's a thing that you just need to sing about, an emotion.
In every generation of music, whether it's called goth, punk, post-punk, or
Emo.
surf music, or psychedelic music, whatever, it's either the subject is like a painting. It either hits you, it's something that hits you, and is born of a true emotion. The difference is with the names of the genres. It's just like, okay, take goth. The use of darker colours as on a painting, rather than loads of bright pastels or whatever. And that's the only difference. The core of the actual music, the emotion, should be the same. A true emotion, or otherwise you're painting by numbers. You know?
The most general feeling of emotion is what it does.
That's not good.
The darkness, which is always attractive, isn't it? Especially in England, which is just another kind of place, especially in the 70s. Yeah.
In terms of that emotional honesty and emotional genuineness, I certainly know that's the reason why the Violets reformed and are writing new stuff, because, Cy Denby, he's not here today, but oh my word, he's seriously one of the best lyricists I've ever met, superb lyricist. And I was saying earlier, we reformed in 2007 to do a reunion gig, and we thought, well, that's fine. But we've got all these songs just bursting out of us because we're still engaged and we're still angry and still kind of pissed off with a lot of stuff. You've got to listen to London's Drowning, really. And as I was saying earlier to you, John, if we were just playing the old songs, which are fun and enjoyable, we'd be kind of like our own tribute band. And so we wouldn't actually still be performing. The only reason the Violets are still performing, and we do still perform the old stuff because people like it, and then we enjoyed writing them. But the only reason we're still performing is that we're writing new material and using new technology, because that's what we were using in the 80s. So, yeah.
Right. I am going to open the floor to questions in a minute, but my final question is the Desert Island Discs. Well, it doesn't have to be a record, but if you found yourself stranded on a desert island disc, apart from a jetpack or a helicopter, what one item relating to this conversation would you want with you?
Item? Like not a piece of music, like a three-dimensional.
Well, I've opened it a bit more, so you don't have to say Mrs. Mill's greatest hits album. It can be a book, record, film.
Back to 100 Sunblock, surely.
In the middle of
The big umbrella.
It's a special goth desert island. It's quite bleak. It's not very sunny.
Barnsley.
It's Barnsley. Except it's surrounded by water.
Right. Barnsley.
I'll take a supply of pens and something to write on, because that's the first thing I want to do.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm not next, someone else.
It's a piece of music as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, okay, right now I will take the new Neubauten album, because it's so amazing. They just wallow in there for weeks. So it's a completely useless thing to take, but it's just such an incredible record. I could listen to that forever and ever.
Get rescued quite quickly. Yeah, that was
I play it loud.
Yeah.
But a bunch of things are letting people shouting on the night.
Natasha.
I'm sticking with the sunblock.
It's not that kind of violence, but Andy, we've got sunblock, pens and paper, and Neubauten. You're ready for a great teenage party.
Presumably a solar-powered hi-fi of some description.
Yeah.
My girlfriend.
Your girlfriend. Oh, isn't that nice? See, emotional to the core.
Yeah, that's too
It
sucky.
incorporates creativity, passion, imagination. Everything's exercised.
That's
What would you take?
what would I take? I would take The Scream by Susie and the Banshees, because I love it. And obviously,
Then you have to take a DVD, CD player or something.
I haven't said that what's
Well,
on
no,
the second
iPod,
yet.
iPod.
Oh, no, then you have to take everything.
Yeah, if you take a few things, I would. I don't know.
Alright, it's the Isle of Wight. Stranded on the island. There's a lot of people stranded on the island.
It's like a razor blade.
Have you ever been to Slough?
I've only been to Slough, not been past Slough.
I am so past Slough. Where I was born. It's changed now. Anyway, but yeah.
We've
So
run
I'll use that desert island thing.
We should have put this in the blur. Questions that will be answered. What is Slough like? Does anybody, and would anybody like to say anything in summing up, or any area that you feel hasn't been covered before we turn things over to
Passion is the most important ingredient in any form of music, no matter what you want to call it, any form of expression.
But see, that's
God does
the
not
trouble with music, though,
necessarily mean
because
it cannot have any passion. Of course it can.
some of the greatest records have got no passion in them at all, haven't they? So it's you
No,
can't pop
great records. No. All the great records have
I
passion.
know some things can be
Even with
stuff
some
dead,
tunes,
some
some
sound beautiful. Yeah.
Passion.
Which that's quite Gothic.
Somebody else talk for a bit.
It's a question.
We're going to take some questions. Gentlemen, there, hand up already. That was quick. Thank you, sir.
Hiya. This is for David.
Oh, no.
You worked for the NME, and was there a kind of actual policy of slagging off goth music?
I think one of the weirdest things was that because we had writers from Leeds, I think there was a slight element of, it was a bit too close to home. Like, oh no, I don't want that following me down. I don't want them getting on the train and coming down here. There wasn't a policy. The enemy didn't really have any policies. Basically, it was hard enough to get into the office in the morning. No, I think there was just something about goth, possibly the reasons that I've suggested, that did put people off, and also it wasn't record company supported. A lot of what we did, John will agree.
Yeah.
The thing that I used to first notice about the enemy, like all the music press, was that it was an arm of the record industry. And you sort of sat over there, and it's like, oh yeah, we're smashing the system. Oh, what are you doing tonight? I'm going to this gig, I've got free tickets, and we're going to this launch. We're going to get over free booze, we're all going to wear promotional clothing, and we'll probably get our cab home on expenses. So yeah, and goth wasn't really goth because of its independent background. And it's a circular thing, it's not cool, so it doesn't get supported by the industry, so it's less cool, so it goes underground, and we
It
didn't
becomes
really...
more cool in its own way, doesn't it? Yeah.
It becomes more cool, but you know, it doesn't have to be in the music papers, and goth's still here, and the music presses, and so there we go.
I know, but let's turn that question around. How much do people actually need the music press to...
Well, I've never read the NME ever.
Yeah.
So we're asking that question because
I
you have no
like
idea.
Because, so how would you get your information at the time?
Probably mates.
Yeah, word of mouth was already working then. In that period, when the music papers are peaking circulation, but because they're ignoring all these cultures, and it's not just goth, there's most, like I said at the start, we invent all these cultures and then sneer them. The people like them, study them, just detach themselves from the mainstream media. And the mainstream media, the music media is just dying, isn't it? Which is a pain in the arse when you're working in it, but it's its own fault for ignoring all these kind of cultures, isn't it? And the best thing at the end is that people involved in these cultures create their own way of moving information around, which is I'm always been fascinated by as well. So some of these bands as we were talking about before, Night Vague, which sold 5,000-6,000, which obviously not the circulation of NME, but it's big enough to get the information around to the community. And the word of mouth for your mates was working, and the gigs as well. And the bands are always generally quite supportive as well, when the bands would tend to work together, so a big band would bring another band up with it. So the bands, because all bands now internet their own media in a sense, but that was already happening in that period as well, wasn't it? So the bigger bands would bring the other bands up with them, and that's how the information went round, wasn't it? Yeah.
I suppose
So
we
you
could
didn't need
ask,
enemy, yeah.
I suppose we could ask, sorry.
Science, of course, as well.
Yeah.
That's what it is handy, being in bands, how did you survive without the beneficent support of the enemy and melody maker? It's all fucking just us, you know. You weren't smash hits much. How did
We
you...
were the smash hits actually. That was
The quiet week down the hip now.
Here are the only ones I never, I don't know. Anyway, how do you survive? Well, it was all about the music. That's what kept you alive. You know, if you can make money from it, then great. But it was a secondary thing. It was, I think for a lot of bands at the time, it was not there was no safeguard. You didn't have the backing of a label that say to the paper, you will not slag this band off, because if you do, then we don't advertise big multinational bands, you know.
I think the reality is
And
that
that
a lot of bands didn't survive, not because of the enemy, I hasten to add, but a lot of bands didn't survive because we didn't get any support. And after, and after a while of sort of like managing on the dole, it's like there's no money left, and it's like, I mean, it happened to us. I mean, Si and I left the band for various reasons, and the band kind of got interest from a record company, and it was the absolute death of the band. I left the band. Si, let's be honest, was kicked out because he was hairy and big, and they got in a woman that looked like Kim Wilde, and the Violets had their crack at fame by being in that. What's that film? Some Kind of Wonderful? And then disappeared without trace because the lyricist had disappeared.
And he actually really cool as well.
And it was fantastic, and it's just like when you take the heart out of a band and insert Kim Wilde alike, bands don't survive. And so a lot of the bands just didn't survive for various reasons, you know, it's like, it gets kind of hungry.
Well, one thing I think we should mention, which is not a part of this, but the fact that one interesting about the goth scene is, it's not just a bloke scene. It's not like you go to... And the interesting thing, people always go about indie gigs, and indies are, oh, it's great, you know, go to an indie gig, and it's all mixed, but actually go to indie gigs, it's about 80% male, but I think the goth scene is 50-50, and it's probably more, if you go to a goth gig, there's probably more women than any other gig of any other type of music you go to, but there's not very, you're one of the rare cases, not many female performances. Obviously Susie's very dominating the scene, but the percentage is smaller than the people go to the gigs, isn't it?
Yeah.
But why would that be, almost?
I think it's called sexism.
Right.
I'll check on that.
Yeah. Sexism from what? From the audience or from the musician?
I think just
world.
sexism. Yeah, we'll talk later. I'll give you all that one.
There are a lot of female.
Well, no, no.
singers.
I would not say the
They're
sexism
singers.
in the alternative music thing. I would beg to differ there. Yeah, it definitely exists.
I would say
But
there's
in
less
the
sexism
alternative,
than goth.
no, that can't be having this excuse. Definitely not. I have known, many people say, I've never experienced or seen that from bands I knew. That actually was definitely more nightly, which was great, as it should be.
Can we have another question?
Next question.
Yes, you, sir.
Hello. Being older than almost anybody here, I was a kid in the 60s and grew up wanting goth to happen. I never actually came on when it did. But I'd sort of seek out, I'd watch The Addams Family and things like that, and read famous monsters of film now. But I'd seek out macabre, sort of different elements in the pop and rock that was around at the time. So the Doors were mentioned, H.P. Lovecraft, the band, some elements of the Rolling Stones in the late 60s. And I was interested in what your view is on those elements that came to form goth. You know, it didn't arrive fully formed, did it? So I'm just wondering what your influence, what were you listening to before the Big Bang with Susie and the Banshees?
I think the Stooges are in there as well.
Yeah.
It's always been, like you say, it's always been a lot of dark strands of music. But I think we're talking about specifically the type of goth we're talking about here, which is kind of where probably where in this room is kind of reaching back into it. It comes out the punk, the punk's a spark a bit, with an added darkness, which and a melancholy kind of mood into it as well, which is probably there anyway. Because like I said, I think the UK is a melancholy place, especially in the late 70s when the country was a broken country and the weather's so crap. You know, it's like 9 months a year, it's grey, isn't it? And how else do you not that seep into you? But there's a beauty in it as well. You know, when you go to places like LA, the boring because it's sunny all the time.
Well, Stefano, what were you listening to before you became?
Glam rock as well, glam rock's really important. Yeah, Bowie, Bolan, that's really key to it. Yeah.
As well as all of that, we were talking about this backstage and backstage. No, I can't. And Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and a lot of it. Yeah, because we were sort of like disagreeing on the drugs we took when we listened to it. we took the same drugs, but you wouldn't listen to Captain Beefheart.
Well, I tried to, but I found Trappist records are very difficult records to listen to Magic Mushroom. It's one of my favourite records. It ties your head up to knots. It took about an hour to get the record off the record player. You know, Magic Mushroom is very difficult to do.
That's why you've got the repeat arm.
My head was in knots because of the way it counts it.
Listen to the norm.
It's a beautiful record.
Yeah.
To answer your question, for me personally, it was I grew up with Edith Piaf, Johnny Cash, in my mother's record collection. My own personal discovery, changed my life, was hearing Ride a White Swan by T-Rex on the radio.
What a record.
And that was it. Driving Light was really sweet. And then Dave Bowie, Roxy, Sex Pistols.
It's interesting because T-Rex is not dark music, but it just fits so perfectly into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's got all the punks, Bowie.
Yes, it's lyrically it's fantastic. You have the theatricality and the brilliant lyrics. Yeah.
My mum was a huge T-Rex fan, so that was while I was growing up on.
Yeah. This was revolutionary music, you know, for us, you know, because as children it's like, this changed the whole world, you know, of music.
I'm a big fan of the weird cover version. One that is very interesting is that after punk, the records that were being covered, and Bowie couldn't be covered because it was a bit too hard to do, but the amount of T-Rex covers in the way, Bauhaus did a Telegram Sam, Susan Banshees did,
and
20th Century Boys.
Hellcats did one too, didn't they? I know they did John Robb, but they did, no, that's not who's Robert. Maybe they did Juice Hellcats. I know they did a T-Rex one, I'm sure they did.
Some did Juice.
I know they wrote the band.
So Glam Rock's in Paul.
Great choice, great song.
But there's interesting what glam rock acts weren't covered, very few. The Damned did Ballroom Blitz. If they did, I don't care.
Sweet, we're a great band for run of singles, 5 singles. Yeah. So Glam Rock was supported because of theatricality, I guess, and great records, and the tribal drums as well, which has been there. The great unspoken, Gary Brooks as well. It's a double drummer thing, very important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speaking with David J about when he was writing Delegated Dead, that apparently the original bass line was taken from Gary Brooks' Rock and Roll.
Was it? What the hell?
Apparently.
What a cool fact. Yeah. But you know what's the nice thing about that? They wrote it 4 weeks before they recorded it. They don't just start the band.
He was my book, but he was coming home from work and he'd seen Bela Lugosi on TV the night before in one of the horror movies, one of Dracula's, and pedaling home from work, lyric popped into head, stopped, pulled out some sticky labels that he had to have in his pocket, wrote a bit, carried on pedaling, stopped, wrote another bit, and by the time he came home had this whole sheet full of sticky labels with the entire lyrics of Bela Lugosi's Dead, took his band practice the next day.
It's really tactically undoctored.
That's a great story.
That's how you write a song. Can we have another question, please? Yes, gentleman there.
That's one.
Let's go on the the dark clothes.
Hello.
This should be rude.
I was wondering what your take is on up-and-coming bands nowadays in terms of the life support mechanisms. For example, when you guys were starting up, there was things like benefits, and university culture seems to be quite important for bands. There's a current attitude now of, work until you drop dead. Do you think that has an effect, or a negative or a positive effect even, on people trying to start up new bands and do something now? And how does that relate to the past?
What way do you think? Say it's easier or more difficult now?
Well, I'm kind of after your opinion on that, really.
Right, okay, so I just wonder what the question was. I think in a sense, the internet makes a massive difference. It does create a space where people, when everyone's moaning about what they used to do 30 years ago, that doesn't matter now. So whatever style of music you're trying to make, there is an established kind of network of forums, message boards, social networking, where you can get the message out there. It's not going to make you really there, but at least you're going to get heard. At least you don't have to go to the music press or the radio like you did 30 years ago and get ignored. So you are your own media now, so that helps. There's certain websites you can probably go to and get written about as well. That's going to help as well. So you get the word out there to start off with. So and get yourself heard, get yourself seen, without anybody changing, without anybody writing it in a different way from what you're trying to make artistically in the first place. So I think in a sense it's slightly easier. What's been interesting in the last 5 years is that bands that people perceive to be lost cause bands for years have actually got bigger. New Model Army is an interesting example. We're not technically a goth band, but a band that a lot of people on that scene like, and came out of that scene, very important in that scene in a way, because that was the house that all those people used to hang around in Bradford. But they just had a top 30 album in Germany and UK for the first time for like 25 years. And I think that's down to they've got a very good forum and very well organised fan base, got the message out. And I've rediscovered old fans who probably lapsed 10 years ago and dragged them back in again. And that's also, I think, so in a sense, these are good times for underground music. And what people call mainstream music isn't really mainstream music. So the stuff that gets played on the radio now, when I look at Manchester terms, a lot of those bands can't even sell out the Apollo. The Apollo's 3,000. But like Rammstein, another band, kind of darkish, kind of dark sense of humour, kind of ish Gothic in a sense. Bands, they can sell out the arena in Manchester, 18,000 people, on no radio play and no mainstream music press. That's got to be down to something. The information's moving around in different ways, isn't it? Internet. It's got to be, isn't it?
And for new bands starting out, it's cheaper to buy recording equipment. The technology has become cheaper, it's improved, it's become smaller. It's just a lot easier. You don't have to look for a label to pay a studio for you to make their first single or album, etc. And also, bands need to go into a studio. They can't make it in their own studio. Then they can do the crowdfunding, Indiegogo. They can do crowd fetching. Again, they can also the internet. So some things, nature always finds a way forward. Some things become more difficult, Philistine, attitudes, whatever. But other things open up. It's always a balance, and always go forward.
I wonder how many of the great goth albums were funded through, gold benefit payouts and that kind of thing, whereas now...
that was a great thing at that time, wasn't it? It was the unofficial musician's wage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The government was the best record company. They were paying the wages of thousands of musicians.
You had the time to be able to, write your music, whereas now I think...
So
everyone must have heard that saying in Los Angeles.
So I wouldn't want to be personally too like, oh yes, it's fabulous now, because I think that I think it's the reality is it's sometimes just really difficult to get people out of the house and come to a gig for whatever reason. It's like we all know gigs where we go and it's a band that we really, really love and 30 people have turned up. So although there are really, really positive things to happen, I think sometimes being too...
So in a sense, everybody's on the internet reading about your band on the same night that you're playing.
It's like also that kind of sense of entitlement that like, well, why should I buy your download? Because I can get it free off YouTube. And it's some of that, the reality is that people do expect everything for free. That's a terrible generalisation, but there is this sense of entitlement that I can get this free.
But more people go watch you play because it's dirty stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw you play Manchester a few months ago, whatever it was, and it was a really good turnout for a wet long night,
And I think one of the things that the Violets have got going for them is that we've got our back catalogue, and that we've got that kind of, oh God, you guys were around when it started, kind of
classic,
that kind of classic thing, and I do think that's one of the things that helps us get, well, not bums on seats, but new rocks on the floor.
Also, you do well as well, which it's a good gig. It wasn't like coasting reputation.
Thank you, because we do want to make the gigs like an event rather than just turn up, play back up to the bar.
I like when you sent back to catalogue as well.
Oh,
We're
right.
we're sent back, which means that we must almost end the event. That's the closing word of the evening. We've got time, gentlemen in the other hat there, for one. This better be a quick question.
Yeah, for John. You mentioned you were considering writing a book earlier about the Goth music scene. If the definitive book hasn't been written, where would you send people to look for basically on the bookshelves?
Right, for what I've read about Natasha's book, I think that's going to be a really good book. I think Mick Mercer's books, even though they're not that in depth, but they're just a fantastic list of things, of information. Those are really good websites as well. I don't think there's been a super definitive book right about in the musical kind of sense, so maybe that's a little gap, because yours covers more for kind of cultural things, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, too, the worldwide Gothic was about the worldwide scene. The art of Gothic, which is the one that's just come out, is about album cover art and film cover art.
So I was kind of going to do, you know, what I was thinking about, I've only done bits of it so far, but I was thinking the way, when John Savage's English Dreaming book, it made people think about punk in a completely different way, because up to that point, people thought punk was a bit of a stupid culture. And I'll talk about people outside the culture, but he made them take it seriously as something that's actually artistically, musically really good. Now, if I can get the book right, I'm not saying I can because I might be too stupid to do it, but I might get this kind of music taken seriously like that. And it did annoy me the way that Simon Rails' book, it was just a fantastic book about a post-punk thing, but missed out for me what was half the music at that time. So I'm trying to get that music, try to explain to people outside this room how good this stuff was, you know, and how bands like Bauhaus are incredibly revolutionary musically. You know, they're not just this band that newspapers hated and that's all they're kind of known for outside the so-called goth scene, but they made revolutionary music which sounds incredible. It came out of the vacuum, you think, wow, well, you know, John Peel played it because he understood how good they were, and when he was playing, you knew he got that as well. This band, within 6 weeks of it, these incredible songs of a whole new sound. I like the early Southern Deathcore and those bands, and Dirt Wears White Socks, which is an incredible record, you know. And I want those records to get taken seriously by people, not in a po-faced way, but people say these should be, you know, the line is classic music in the UK. You see, it goes this, Beatles, Stones, there's a gap where this stuff should be, and I want to get the stuff put back in the lineage in a sense, you know, what it should be. And then the next time they make a programme on Goth and BBC, don't put Shakespeare's sister in it, because they'll understand what it actually probably really was. But also widen the premises of it, because there's a lot of industrial music which kind of fits into it as well, you know, I think that's important. You know, and stuff, so it's not just, you know, people always say there's 5 bands and that's it. So it's kind of interesting writing about a thing that's not really seen when other bands say the goth bands. So you kind of lumping people together, then unlumping them straight away. So it'd be like that. It's ambitious. It's a stupid class, clearly. Yeah.
Can I just break back in and say, not just people outside this room, but I think a lot of people already in the scene would really appreciate having that from somebody like yourself.
I'd imagine on message boards everywhere they'll be slagging me off saying, who do you think he is saying it's this and that, but that's cool. I mean, one of the things is, it's one of the greatest things is getting slagged off by everybody as well. That's quite good fun.
And on that note, I'd like to thank Andy, Rosie, Natasha and John and you for coming. Thank you very much.
Great chat. Thank you so much.
You were there this morning.
This one passed the acid test.
It did, didn't it?
20s, 30s. Of course, I love Bell and Lugosi like most people here have done when I was a child, you know. That's how it started.
I think probably most of you agree some element of that in your attraction. What about you, Natasha?
For me, it's really difficult because goth has always been there. I've never been attracted to anything other than Goth and Gothic. So I mean, from the first moment I saw Siouxsie and the Banshees, which is probably on the old grey whistle test back in the late 70s, before they were even, you know, fully Gothic, there was just something about them. And I was very young at the time, and I sat down with my mum and I said, but what on earth was I doing watching the old grey whistle test? What was I doing being attracted to this music? And we sat out and we tried to work it out. And the only thing I can think of is that my father was a really big horror movie fan. And I used to, you know, sneak downstairs in the middle of the night and peek the head around the corner, and he'd be watching Hammer Horror or, you know, sort of Bela Lugosi movies or Boris Karloff, you know, that kind of stuff. So I was drawn to that, probably because it was forbidden. I wasn't supposed to be watching it. He had loads of horror books. He was always reading, you know, literature like that. He loved Gothic novels. My mother was an artist, and she was drawn to the macabre. And so I was brought up kind of surrounded by that. My father also worked in the medical profession, so, you know, we had these sort of rather gruesome medical encyclopedias.
Oh.
So I think that, coupled with the visuals of Siouxsie and the Banshees, who, for me, they kind of always looked like they'd fallen out of some sort of twisted fairy tale. And I think the songs are very simplistic, they're dark, but they're very simplistic and sing-songy and almost like sort of nursery rhymes or fairy tales, certainly early on.
Well, literally, they would be nursery rhymes
Yeah.
and fairy tales, yeah.
And so I think just the whole thing, that's what attracted me. And then kind of as I went through life, people started saying, oh, you're a goth. Am I? You mean, hang on, there's actually a thing? I'm not doing something that is just unique to me. Other people like this stuff too? Wow. Where are they? Take me to them. You know, and eventually I met many of them and, you know, realised it was a thing.
I mean, that's I think, is one of the great things about this. It's a community. Would you say, Rosie, that when you became interested in music and literature and so on, that you found that all these strands came together into what is called Goth?
I think it did. You know, Goth called and I answered, and I do think it came from, you know, it's that classic thing of looking back and thinking, where on earth did that come from? And I guess for me it came from a profound sense from when I was little, because it wasn't, the music movement wasn't around then, being quite ancient. It came from I thought you might sympathise. Being I'm the oldest person in the entire place, probably. From a profound sense of feeling different. And I didn't have words for that as a kid. I knew that I was adopted, and I knew that I didn't want to be pregnant by the age of 16. And you know, although I didn't have the word queer when I was sort of like 9 or 10, I certainly knew that I didn't fancy boys in the way that all my friends did. And I think all that kind of coalesced into a sense of being on the outside and not being on the inside, which kind of links into the Goth thing. But I think when Goth really first happened, I had an aunt who lived in the States, and people in the States have got a slightly different idea on what constitutes improving literature for children. And I think the Christmas of when I was 8 or 9, she sent a collection of Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Mystery and Imagination as a Christmas present for me. And I can distinctly remember the first time I read The Pit and the Pendulum. And I didn't know that Goth existed, I didn't know Gothic literature existed, but I knew some deep chord in myself had been strummed. And that was the music. For me, the music came out of Gothic literature. Yeah. And so I devoured a lot of that. I was around when punk was happening, and so my mother refused to let me wear black because she said it was an old lady's colour.
Same thing here.
Yes. So yeah, and I used to really piss my mum off by saying, if you'd let me wear black when I was a kid, I probably wouldn't wear so much now. Lying, of course. And I left home, moved north, best place in the world to live, still live in the north. And it just happened that I was hanging around with a bunch of people in 1980-81, and the March Violets happened. I made a bit of a rubbish goth because I was a lesbian, there were no other lesbian goths. And I kind of made a really rubbish lesbian because lesbians didn't have long hair and wear leather. I know, I never really, misfits. Thank you, John.
Now, on the musical side of it, you were very well placed, because for reasons which nobody can really put their finger on, Goth really sort of took off more in the north of England than it did. I was in Devon at the time, and there were no Goths. There were surfers, and I think surfers are the opposite of Goths, in that you hope they might drown. But yeah, you were there. I mean, basically, because you come through punk rock and you were in the north of England, so you must have seen in the exhibition downstairs. There's a very strange article on the wall. It's the headline is "Punk Gothic," and it's like,
yeah, we talked about that before.
yeah, there isn't such a thing as goth music at this point, so they're calling it punk. So what was it like at that time?
Well, for me, from my perspective, and I come more from a punk rock perspective, but punk was like the hammer that kind of smashed pop culture in the mid to late 70s. They never reconstituted the culture the way they wanted, so if you're into kind of darker things, you kind of reinvented all those little bits of the shrapnels left over in a darker kind of way. But already in punk, there was like darker ends of it. One of the early Adam and the Ants, you know, Dirt Rides White Socks, a record hated by the music press, but a genius record, a template for a lot of stuff.
What a massive fan base. I remember being a concert.
Yeah, you could get 1,000 people to gig in London on 10 bad reviews, you know.
Yeah.
And I'd even argue the first three Stranglers albums are a very important template as well. Very dark sounding band, dressing in black as well. Joy Division's in there as well. But the first time I ever heard the term goth was when Tony Wilson discovered
I might as well, while I'm up here, just introduce everybody now. This is Andi Gang, who gave us that fantastic reading just
Hey,
now.
hi!
Next to Andi is Natasha Scharf, author, DJ and journalist, best known for lots of things, including the book Worldwide Gothic. Next to Natasha is Rosie Garland, singer, writer, performer. She's also Rosie Lugosi, the Vampire Queen, as well as author of the novel The Palace of Curiosities and Vixen. And next to everybody, I feel like I'm the bloke of University Challenge.
maybe it's like a quiz.
He's a bass player, he's a vocalist from the Membranes, he's a journalist, he's a music writer, he's also in the band Goldblade, he's written loads and loads of books about music. I know that at the moment he's crowdfunding a book about Goth. It's John Robb. And my name is David Quantick. Thank you for coming. Right, I'll just set my watch, but I feel I should really be having a candle with black markings on the side to mark the passage of time. Thank you very much. Welcome to this event. It's tied in with the British Library's Gothic event, as you may have noticed from their short promotional trailer earlier, which was rather sweet. And we're going to be ranging over, obviously, the area of Goth and its musical importance, and I'll be asking people a couple of questions. But one of my short intro is it's always fascinated me the way that Goth, as amongst all the so-called tribes, all the music genres of Britain, is the only one to come out of literature and poetry. Say what you like about mods, and I think they're wankers. Mod, like a lot of things, came out of fashion and clothes. There is that element to the Gothic subculture, but it's unique to me. While other subcultures are about dressing up or about sex and dancing, the Gothic subculture, to me, it came out of things. It came out of an interest in death. It came out of an interest in the unknown, in darkness, and there really isn't anything like it. And I think for that reason, it should be celebrated. And I'm now going to ask, starting with Andi, who gave us that fantastic reading and brilliantly tied everything in, to Dracula, to Bram Stoker, to the origins of Goth and Gothic. What sort of stirred your interest? How did you go from whatever you were doing when you were younger to becoming a singer, to becoming a so-called Goth?
I've always loved the arts. I first used to paint, seriously. Then I was a political activist for some years. I was arrested several times for that, by the way. And I fell into music when I went on the run from the police, to be honest. When I moved to Brixton, which was a safe haven then. And but I always loved music. It was, as a medium, music overtook painting, because it's multimedia. In terms of lyrics, music, visuals, film, all the things I love. And I just fell into it, but I always had the desire to express through music, as I felt it the ultimate medium. And as for the style of music, or the things that one is drawn to, well, it's just something that's in your nature, in your soul. You know, it's like black and white movies.
You had two-tone coming along. You had the New Romantics, you had people dressing up as Mexican barmen, that sort of thing, which was kind of nice. And it was really interesting that also the sound, I mean, you started basically becoming a musician and singer around this time. The sound of Goth doesn't have a lot of bongos on it, a lot of trumpets on it.
No, I would say it was also pretty minimal. And I was trying to add, going back to Douglas White Socks, so glad you brought that up, mentioned it. That album is perhaps the most seminal album. For me, is as important, if not more so, than the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. I think the Beatles were a great band. Deserving of their reputation. It doesn't matter. It's just a...
Fair enough.
But I mean, Douglas White Socks rewrote the rule book. And it's like, fuck yeah. May I say that? Fuck. Alex, sorry. We rewrote the rule book. Just suddenly thought, I can do this. Like, yeah, I couldn't stand those freaking cliches, in music, and this was different. It was just coming from nowhere. It didn't sound like anything else at the time. It wasn't trying to fit into a market, and for not just myself, but for so many others, that was just like, yes, let's do something that doesn't fit anywhere. Let's express ourselves freely. I just come from doing a lot of extreme weird shit, in my political days, and so I wasn't about to bend over and make music that I thought the record companies would like. It was like that, I wanted to destroy all of that.
Which was just as well, because they wouldn't take any notice of us anyway.
There is a way of doing that, which I did do. I'll talk about it afterwards.
But I think that was one of the really exciting things about the 80s, which feels like we're kind of coming around to it again, was that we knew that the record company was never going to press our records. So we were with the Sisters with Merciful Release for a while, but it was this idea of like, if you haven't got a record label, start your own. Contact some people who will press up 7 inches, design your own 7-inch covers, and do it yourself. Maybe if you can get
that was a very important start that came out of punk as well. It created that space
to independent labels. Without being too rude, it's like NME, for example, weren't terribly nice. They weren't terribly nice. No, we're not going to pick on them because you're a very nice man. But a lot of the music press, the fashionable music press, like, we sneered at us, and it's what happens.
No, it's absolutely. To be honest, I think that's one of the reasons that Goth has survived, because it's never
been incentivised.
It's never been fashionable. I think there was a week in 1983 I would go to the Batcave because it had been in the face. It seems extraordinary now. You read about it in the face and you go down there and you think, oh, this is quite good, and then you wouldn't go back. But
see, that's when the rest of us stopped going.
Right, because it had been too. It was too.
It wasn't very clever in the beginning. The only thing I have at the Batcave is, for some reason, a lot of
Dry Joy Division as a goth band, and that was about really early on, before they even, when he just picked it up for Factory. There was no sense that there was a scene either, and I think, we kind of talked about this before, with the idea, there's two things here really, that in the UK, we invent all the best youth cultures in the world, and then we completely disown them and look a bit embarrassed about it, while the rest of the world has a great time enjoying those youth cultures. But at the same time, you would never admit you're in the youth culture. I mean, I would never admit I was a punk, and I was interested in goth music. There's no way I'd ever say I was a goth. I mean, why would no, I don't think anyone in this room would consider themselves a thing. There's that idea, I know everyone says individually you're all the same, but people like the look, and they like that kind of music. So it's a very disparate scene of people doing very different things in different places at the same time. And for me, the kind of, when it went overground, in a sense, to me, was the Futurama at D-Side Leisure Centre. Was that 1980 or 82? I can't remember now which year it was.
82, the Futurama one.
Yeah, and I know people have been doing stuff before, but that seemed to be the first weekend where everybody seemed to meet everyone else. Some deathcore played it, the Dan played it. There's like a lot of bands, and it was just one of those moments where everyone went, wow, where's all these people come from? They're into it. And it was a continuation of punk, which, it was the freakier end of punk, which is interesting. One of the things that's interesting about punk, and glam's a big influence as well, and goth as well. It's all about, the thing about glam was, it was people dressing up on top of the pops, and it was unattainable, you couldn't do it, and it was like David Bowie came from Mars, he didn't come, and Mark Bowen came from London, and to us in Blackpool, London couldn't as well be Mars, it was like a million miles away. But the great thing about punk and goth was, it was dressing up in the suburbs, and the not so great thing was getting beaten up and dressing up in the suburbs, but you were dressing up like the freaks you'd grown up with dressing up, and it was your turn, and you're on the street doing it. And that's the strength of it, and it got people to dress up and do freakier things, and it created a space for that to happen as well. And for me, and punk created the energy to do that, so, and Goth reinterpreted in its own kind of way. Now, it's an endless argument to define what exactly Goth is, and everybody in this room will have their own interpretation of it. So if I gave you what my interpretation of it, but everyone go, oh, no. But to me, it's more. There's obviously kind of classic Goth groups, you know, the Cure or whatever, the early Cure. And Pornography is still one of my favourite records. It's a fantastic record, a really dark record. Joy Division is one, even though they were never ostensibly a proper Goth bands, but the music's super dark, futuristic, never dates. But I also like some of the more underground, we talked about before as well, like I think actually Andi Gang in a sense are an absolute classic Goth band, even though Blix and Bargeld will probably get have a fight over you about that, you know. But the way he looked and what they sound like, and to me it's a very art, like you said a minute ago about literature and stuff like that. It's an art movement, and this cliched idea, and it's great all the stuff about the vampires now because everyone's attracted to the dark and it's sexy the dark side. But it's also a proper art movement as well. The way that
we'll come on to that in a second, John.
Yeah.
I wanted talking about the musical side of it. I mean, you're right. I was around. I think there isn't a single person on this table who's under 17, if I'm honest. With all due respect. And one of the strange. I mean, I do remember at the end of the punk, suddenly you'd see people wearing long, flowing clothes, black clothes by and large. You'd see back combing, and it was interesting because after punk, things fracturing. You had these people on the King's Road with the peacock punk, and that was obviously sort of died off.